She was the princess no one could touch on the glowing planet of Shirelia, where the skies burned violet and the palaces floated above silver oceans. There lived a princess no one dared to love. Her name was Heir. She was royalty, perfect in form, flawless in manners, and born into power. Her long crystal blue hair shimmered like liquid light, and her skin glowed softly in the dark. Many called her the jewel of the sky. But behind the beauty was a secret. Heir was declared infertile at birth, and in her world, that meant she was useless, not allowed to marry, not allowed to rule, not even allowed to dream. Her father, the great King Virek, kept her hidden. She was brought out only for formal ceremonies, where she wore golden chains, smiled politely, and said nothing. To outsiders, she was honored. To her people, she was broken. And deep inside, Heir believed it too. That all changed the day the humans came. For the first time in 100 cycles, a human ambassador had been invited to Shirelia. His name was Jalen Cross, and he came in peace, offering trade, science, and cultural exchange. He was tall, with sharp eyes, short dark hair, and a calm presence that made everyone around him quiet. He wasn't like the other diplomats. He didn't speak in riddles. He didn't bow too low, and when his eyes first met Heir's, during a royal feast, he didn't look away. He saw her. Not her title, not her problem. Her. Later that night, Heir sat in her high tower, alone. The stars outside blinked like silent watchers. She thought about the way Jalen had smiled at her. Not with pity, but with curiosity. He had spoken only once during the banquet, just one question directed at her. "What do you want, princess?" No one had ever asked her that before. She didn't answer then. She didn't know how. But that question stayed with her. It echoed in her chest like a forgotten song. The next morning, something unusual happened. The king summoned her. She walked. Through the great silver halls, guards on both sides. Her dress shimmered. Her steps were slow. Her heart felt heavy. Inside the throne room, the king sat on a tall obsidian chair. His face was sharp and hard, like carved stone. Beside him stood Jalen Cross. Heir blinked. Why was he here? The king's voice echoed. "We have accepted the human alliance, and as a symbol of trust, we are offering a gift." He looked at her. "You." Heir's breath caught. She looked at Jalen. He looked just as surprised as she was. The king continued. "You will be sent to the humans, to learn from them, to be their symbol of our peace. You are no longer needed here." That last line hit her like fire. You are no longer needed. Jalen followed her out of the room later. She didn't speak. She walked fast, angry, confused, ashamed. But he stopped her gently. "I didn't ask for this," he said softly. "And I won't force it. If you want to stay, I'll tell them no." She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time in her life, someone gave her a choice. She could say no, but she didn't. She said, "Take me with you." And something inside her chest finally moved. Not because she was escaping, but because maybe, just maybe, this was the first time she was walking toward something. When they left Shirelia, the skies were quiet. The stars didn't cheer. The people didn't wave. But Heir felt lighter than ever before. She had been raised to feel like a locked treasure box, pretty, untouchable, and empty inside. Now she was being taken away from everything she knew. And she wasn't afraid. She was ready. What she didn't know was that this journey would change more than just her life. It would change her body, her future, and the destiny of two worlds. Because what they believed about her was a lie, and the truth was growing inside her, quietly, secretly, and impossibly. The human who didn't treat her like a bargain. The stars looked different from the human ship. Colder, quieter. Heir stood beside the window in her private room, staring into the blackness of space. The stars of her planet were violet and warm. These were white and sharp. Strange. She was no longer a princess. She was a passenger, a gift, a political tool. But what confused her most was that no one treated her like that, not even once, especially not Jalen. Commander Jalen Cross had seen many alien worlds in his life. He had sat at tables with warmongers, traitors, and kings. But never had he met someone like her. Elira wasn't loud or proud. She was quiet. But her silence wasn't empty. It was heavy. Full of things unspoken. Full of wounds no one else seemed to see. He didn't speak much to her those first few days. But when he did, it was with care. Like he was trying not to scare something beautiful away. On the third day aboard the ship, Elira wandered into the garden bay. It was small, just a circular room with plants from Earth. Blue ferns, yellow moss, artificial sunlight. She found him there, alone, trimming a plant. He didn't look up. "You can walk wherever you want," he said, his voice calm. "This ship doesn't believe in cages." She nodded slowly. "It's quiet here," he smiled. "That's why I come." She looked around. "These plants, and they feel alive." "They are," he said. "Some from Earth, some from other colonies. I bring pieces of home with me." She sat across from him on the bench. They didn't speak for a long time, and it was the most peaceful silence she'd ever known. The crew treated her with respect, but with distance. No one asked her personal questions. No one stared at her like a relic. And Jalen, he asked her what she liked to eat. He brought her tea that smelled of vanilla and warm metal. He fixed the temperature in her room when he saw her wrap her arms too tightly at night. He didn't touch her. He didn't flirt. He simply noticed, and that made her heart tremble more than any royal speech ever had. One night she sat beside him in the command bay. He was reviewing star charts. She watched his hands move across the controls, strong but gentle. "Why did you accept me?" she asked softly. He paused, then answered, "Because I didn't want your people to throw you away." She blinked. He looked at her. "You were being treated like a gift, but I don't see you that way." "How do you see me?" He looked away, then back. "I see a woman who deserved a choice. I figured if I said yes, you might get one." Her throat tightened, and, for the first time since she left her planet, she smiled. Later that week, she joined him during the engine checks. He explained how the ship worked. She listened carefully, asking questions, showing interest, helping where she could. She had been raised to be silent. Now, she was learning how to speak, not with words, with presence, with curiosity, with strength. And Jalen never once looked down on her for not knowing. One night, he walked her back to her room. She paused at the door. He didn't step closer. He just said, "You can sleep, safe. No one here will hurt you." She stared at him. "Why do you care?" He smiled gently. "Because we humans believe in value that can't be measured." She frowned. "But your people said I was gifted to you." "And I didn't ask for a gift," he said. "I found a person." That night, Elira stood at the mirror in her room. She touched her own face. For so long she had been seen as useless, a symbol of failure. But now someone had spoken to her like she mattered, not because of what she could do, but because of who she was. Her hands touched her lower stomach. Something was changing inside her, not just in her heart, but in her body too. Something new. Something impossible. And she had no idea that the truth growing inside her would shake two empires. A night that changed everything. The storm came without warning. A pulse wave from a nearby red giant sent tremors through space. The ship's lights flickered and alarms echoed through the halls. Elira clutched the wall as the floor shook beneath her. Outside her window, the stars blurred in streaks of color. Then came the voice. Emergency protocol. All passengers remain in quarters. Engines offline. Temporary shelter engaged. She barely understood what it meant. All she knew was that something was wrong, and the silence was gone. 10 minutes later, her door opened. Commander Jalen stood there, soaked in sweat and steam from the failing systems. His jacket was off, his shirt partially unzipped. He looked more human than ever, raw, real, worn. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just scared." He stepped inside. "It's temporary. We were hit with a solar flare. We're in blackout mode until the engines stabilize." She touched the wall. "Will we survive?" He smiled gently. "I've been through worse." She looked at him closely. "You always look calm." "I'm not," he admitted. "But calm helps the people around me stay steady, including you." The emergency lights glowed red in the corner of her room. A soft hum filled the air. No more shaking. Just a heavy quiet. He sat down on the bench near her wall. His chest rose and fell slowly. He looked tired. She stepped toward him. "You stayed. For me," she said. He looked up. "Of course I did." "No one has ever done that before." Jalen said nothing, just looked at her. Really looked. Like she wasn't an alien. Not royalty. Not a broken offering, just a woman. She sat beside him. For a long time, they didn't speak. Then she whispered, "When you look at me like that, I forget I was ever called infertile." He turned to her. "That word doesn't define you, never did. But it defined my life." "Maybe," he said. "But your life just started again." Elira wasn't sure what made her do it. The flickering lights, the silence, the heat between them, or maybe it was the way he made her feel human. She leaned in. He didn't move away. Their lips met, softly, unsure at first, then deeper, slower. Real, not a performance. Not an order, not for politics, just them. The room faded. The stars didn't matter. The ship didn't matter. Only the feeling of warmth and closeness. Of being held and finally, not being alone. For the first time in her life, Elira chose. And Jalen didn't take. He gave. He gave her something sacred. Trust. When the ship's systems powered back on, the room returned to normal. Lights brightened. Temperature adjusted. The hum of engines returned. But nothing between them was the same. Later that night, wrapped in silence, she lay beside him on the small bench. He was already asleep, his arm around her like a shield. She listened to the steady rhythm of his heart, one beat after another, strong, alive, and for the first time, she imagined a future. Days passed. She felt strange, not sick, but different. A warmth in her body, a flutter deep inside her belly. She kept it secret. Until the moment came. In the med bay, a silent scan lit up her chest. The result flashed in golden, letters across the screen. Life detected. She stared at it, stared so long she forgot to breathe. Then a soft voice from the medbot spoke. Subject Elira. Confirmed early-stage pregnancy. Hybrid cell formation confirmed. 0 genetic defects. She fell into the chair, shaking, crying, laughing all at once. She whispered to herself, "Impossible." But her hand rested on her stomach, and the truth pulsed beneath it. Elira, the princess who was told she could never give life, had just created one. And no one in the galaxy was ready for what that meant. Not the humans, not the Xerelians, not even her. The impossible miracle. She sat alone in the med bay. The screen in front of her still glowed with the same golden words. Confirmed. Early stage pregnancy. Viable hybrid. No defects. Elira stared at it, barely breathing. The silence, In the room felt loud. Her hands rested on her stomach, though there was no visible change, no outward sign. But inside her, something real, something living, was growing, something the galaxy had said could never happen. She had been told she was infertile from birth, but the scan didn't lie. She was carrying a child, his child. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay in bed, watching the shadows on the ceiling. Questions circled her like quiet thunder. How could this happen? Was the diagnosis wrong all her life? Or was it him? Was it something about Jalen? His human DNA? His warmth? His faith in her? She thought back to his hands, the way he touched her like she was whole, like nothing in her was broken. Maybe that was what made this possible. Not just biology, but belief. She told no one. Not yet. She needed time to feel it was real, to make peace with it. But her body was already changing. She felt it in the mornings. Dizziness, heat, strange cravings for cold fruits and glowing liquids. The medbay confirmed normal development. No danger. The baby was strong, so was she. A week later, she sat across from Jalen in the garden bay again. He was reading old earth poetry aloud to her, one hand lazily stroking the edge of a fern leaf. She watched him carefully. Every word he said made her chest feel heavy in the best way. He had no idea what was happening inside her. Not yet. Then he looked up. "You're quiet tonight." She blinked. "Just thinking." "About?" She hesitated, then smiled. "About how strange it is to feel full when you've spent your whole life feeling empty." He studied her. "That's a powerful thing. To say, I mean it. I believe you." Their eyes met, and she knew he was ready. She just wasn't. Not yet. But someone else had already noticed. In the shadows of the ship, a crew medic had reviewed her scans. The pregnancy was flagged as a classified anomaly, hybrid fetus, unknown compatibility, high interest alert. The data was quietly transmitted to Earth's diplomatic team, and someone else, a third party, someone watching from her home planet. Back on Girelia, inside the royal palace, a secret message reached. The king's private chamber. He read it once, then again. His face changed slowly, twisting from confusion to disbelief to rage. "She was barren," he whispered. The guards outside the door heard a loud crash as a golden vase shattered against the wall. The king didn't yell. He didn't scream. But the next words out of his mouth chilled the air around him. The child must be taken. Back, aboard the ship, Elira began to feel strange energies building around her. Some crew members started acting distant. Whispers followed her when she walked down the halls. And late one night, she found a guard posted near the medbay. When she asked why, he said nothing, just stood still. Too still. That same night, Jalen returned from a system meeting. He stepped into her quarters and saw her pacing. She turned to him, finally ready. "I have to tell you something." He stopped in his tracks, then nodded. "Okay." She took his hands, pressed them to her. "Belly, I'm pregnant." He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there absorbing it. Then, slowly, he sank to his knees. His forehead rested against her stomach, and his voice broke with a single word. "Ours." For a few hours, everything felt like it might be okay. But outside that room, the storm was already on its way, because the galaxy had never seen a child like this before. A miracle to some, a threat to others. And very soon, the child would be hunted. The king demands the child be taken. The message came in the middle of the night. It was silent. No sirens. No alarm. Just a red light blinking quietly on the ship's main console. Commander Jalen Cross stood alone in the comm room, reading the encrypted orders from the Xerelian Royal Command. His jaw clenched. The words were simple, but they hit like a weapon. Princess Elira is carrying unauthorized royal blood. The hybrid child is to be recovered immediately. The human is to be separated. Do not inform the subject. This is a royal matter. It was signed by the king himself. Jalen stood frozen for several seconds. Then, without another thought, he locked the transmission. He knew what this meant. They didn't want the child as a miracle. They wanted it as a weapon, a tool, a threat, a future they could control. And worst of all, they were planning to take Elira away before she even knew what was coming. He rushed down the hallway, past guards, past curious crew members. He didn't stop until he reached her quarters. She was already awake, sitting by the window, hands gently resting on her growing stomach. She looked up at him and knew something was wrong. Jalen. What is it? He took her hands. We don't have much time. Her breath caught. They know, don't they? He nodded. They're coming. Who? Your father, your people, maybe even mine. They don't want this child born on our terms. Her voice trembled. Then what do we do? He looked her straight in the eyes. We run. The decision was made in less than a minute. Elira didn't question him. She didn't ask for proof or data. She believed him, because belief was the only thing they had left. While Jalen prepared a hidden escape shuttle from the lower cargo bay, Elira packed the little she needed, a satchel with nutrient packs, data crystals, and a small woven charm her mother had once given her in secret. As she looked at it, she remembered the old words. True royalty is not born. It's chosen by sacrifice. By the time they reached the docking ring, 2 armed officers were already waiting. Not Jalen's crew, not Earth soldiers, Cerellian agents. They wore royal colors, and their helmets glowed with pale energy. One raised a hand. Princess Elira, by royal command you are to return home. The child will be cared for under palace protection. Jalen stepped forward. She's not going anywhere. The agent spoke calmly. This is not your concern, human. Elira stepped between them. No one will touch my child. The officer lifted his weapon, but he never got the chance to fire. With one swift motion, Jalen grabbed the edge of the support beam and launched himself forward, slamming into the soldier, with full force. The other agent reached for a stun baton, but Elira had already moved. She struck low, using the close-range pressure point Jalen had taught her. He collapsed. Silence, just heavy breathing, and 2 unconscious bodies. The shuttle doors slid open. They stepped inside, sealing the hatch behind them. As the engines powered up, Elira looked out the window one last time. Her home planet was still far away, but now it felt like the enemy. As they entered hyperspace, Elira sat down in the co-pilot seat, her hand gently pressed to her stomach. Her voice was soft. Do you think they'll ever stop coming? Jalen didn't lie. No. She nodded. Then we'll just keep moving. He looked at her. No, we'll start fighting. For the first time in her life, Elira wasn't waiting to be saved. She wasn't a broken princess anymore, she was a mother. And no king, human or alien, would take that away from her. Far across the stars, in a dark royal chamber, the king sat, trembling, not with fear, with rage. He slammed his fist onto the table. Find them. I don't care the cost. A soldier stepped forward. And the child? The king's eyes glowed with fury. Bring it to me alive. I want to see what makes a human so powerful that it could fix what we declared broken. They thought she'd give in. She became a warrior. The moon was quiet. No cities, no soldiers, just wind, dust, and sky. Elira stood at the edge of a jagged cliff, her cloak blowing behind her. The desert moon beneath her feet was harsh, dry, and unwelcoming, but it was safe. And for now, that was enough. Behind her, Jalen adjusted a solar receiver near the entrance of their hidden shelter. They'd been there for 5 weeks. No signals, no transmissions, only silence. But silence was never permanent. Not when you were carrying something the galaxy wanted to steal. Elira hadn't cried since they left the ship. Not once. There wasn't time for grief. Or fear. Or even softness. Her hands had grown stronger, her body tougher. Her belly was rounder now, life growing inside her, despite everything she had once been told. She had trained every morning, hand-to-hand combat, blaster drills, mental control, exercises. Jalen was her teacher, but she became her own weapon. "You're improving fast," Jalen said one day, watching her disarm a training drone in under 6 seconds. She was panting, sweat dripping down her temples, but her eyes were focused. "I'm not trying to improve," she said. "I'm trying to survive." They had dug into the cliffs, fortified walls, hidden sensors, emergency escape paths. Heir learned every system. She studied old Earth war tactics. She memorized maps of nearby systems. She became what her people said she could never be, a protector. One evening, as the suns dipped below the red hills, Jalen brought her a cup of cooling tea. They sat beside the fire pit in silence. She looked at him. "I used to think strength meant hiding pain." "And now?" he asked. She took his hand. "Now I know it means fighting through it." He smiled. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." She looked down at her belly. "Because of him. Or her. Because of you," he said. They never spoke of the child as an heir. Not anymore. They weren't building a throne. They were building a future. But far above them, the silence finally broke. A signal, brief, encrypted. It came from a stolen drone activated by mistake. And it was enough. Enough to give them away. 3 ships entered orbit 2 nights later. Black, silent, fast. No flags, no official emblems, but they belonged to Sorelia. They weren't here to talk. They were here to take. The first blast hit the outer cliff wall. Dust and fire. Alarms screamed through the shelter. Jalen grabbed his rifle. "Go now, Tunnel 5, Heir didn't argue. She wrapped herself in armor-light fabric, grabbed the emergency pack and pressed a hand to her belly. Then she ran. Outside, fire lit the sky. Searchlights swept across the cliffs. Boots hit the ground. Sorelian agents in gray-black armor moved like shadows, scanning for heat signatures. But they weren't ready for what they found. They weren't ready for her. Heir dropped from the cliffs like a ghost, disabling the first unit with a stun baton to the neck. The second turned too slow. She kicked him down and vanished into the smoke. Jalen fought his way to the south ridge, drawing fire, buying her time. "We need to get to the dropship," he shouted over the comms. Heir's voice was clear. "I'm already there." He smiled. She wasn't running. She was leading. They escaped into orbit in a stolen scout ship, battered but intact. Below them, the Sorelian troops were left scrambling in the dust, and Heir stood at the front window of the ship, her hand on the glass, watching the red moon fade behind them, not with fear, not with sorrow, but with fire in her chest. "She's no longer hiding," Jalen said. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any war cry. Back on the Sorelian command bridge, a general delivered the report to the king. Mission failed. The princess escaped again. The king's eyes narrowed. "She's no longer a princess," he growled. "She's a threat." But across the stars, Heir didn't care about thrones anymore. She wasn't fighting for a crown. She was fighting for her child, for her love, for a future no one could take from her. She had been given away, labeled broken, forgotten. But now she was writing her own story, and it was just beginning. Now the galaxy knows who she is. The transmission went viral in less than 2 hours. A simple message. One voice, one face, her face. No crown, no throne. Just Heir standing before a gray sky, her hand resting gently over her growing stomach. And her words? "They called me broken. They gave me away. But I gave birth to a future they could never. Imagine, I am not a gift, I am a mother, a protector, a warrior, and I will not run anymore." Across Sorelia, across Earth, across neutral systems, the message spread like fire through dry grass. Aliens paused in marketplaces. Humans stopped mid-mission. Even soldiers lowered their weapons to listen. Everyone knew her name now. Heir. Once, discarded, now remembered, now feared, now respected. On the royal balcony of the palace she once called home, the king stood silent as his advisors argued. The people support her. She's gained sympathy in over 7 systems. She carries royal blood, Your Grace, you cannot erase that. But the king's voice cut through them all. If she wants war, we'll give her war. But Elira didn't want war. She wanted something far more dangerous. She wanted truth. From the bridge of her new ship, a hybrid vessel powered by both human and Xerelian tech, Elira stared out into space. Behind her, Jalen stood holding a small data tablet. You've lit the stars on fire, he said with a smile. She glanced back. Let them burn. She had grown stronger, not just with weapons or words, but with purpose. She no longer hid, no longer asked for permission to exist. She commanded, she inspired. Her name was now spoken across council halls, whispered by rebels, celebrated by mothers. Not because she was royal, because she had survived and shown others how to do the same. On the 5th moon of Ventara, Elira gave birth under a sky filled with twin suns. No doctors from the palace, no ceremony. Just her, Jalen, and a team of trusted, human and alien medics. And when the child cried for the first time, something shifted across the galaxy. It was like an echo through every system where someone had ever been silenced. A sound of new beginnings. They named him Cairo, the child of 2 worlds, half fire, half calm, and fully, unmistakably, free. The king tried once more to strike, sent a final fleet to the Venturan moons. But when they arrived, they found not a single rebel base. They found thousands, united by her voice, her message, her strength. Elira had become something no army could shoot down. A symbol. On Earth, young girls studied her name in digital textbooks. On Cyrelia, for the first time in history, temples were renamed to honor a woman who had once been exiled. Statues went up, not of warriors or kings, but of a mother holding a child with stars behind her. Years later, as Cairo played near a garden glowing with alien flowers, he asked his mother a simple question. Why did they call you broken? She knelt beside him and smiled. Because they were afraid of the day I would stop believing it. He looked up. And what happened when you did? She touched his cheek. You were born. That night she stood beside Jalen watching the stars. Do you think peace will last? She asked. He put his arm around her. Maybe not, but now they know who you are. She nodded and whispered, I am the princess they gave away. I am the warrior they couldn't break. And I am the mother of the heir they never wanted, but can never stop. Now the galaxy knows her name, not because she followed the rules, but because she rewrote them.